And we are back. For those of you that were able to tune in this morning, we talked with Daniel Marcoux from the Alexa Science Organization. And now here we are 30 minutes later, and I'm very excited to have a conversation about Alexa Conversations. And I've got some really important people related to Alexa Conversations here with me. So I'll start by introducing myself. I don't often do this very frequently, but my name is Jeff Blankenburg, and my role as an evangelist on the Alexa team is to share my excitement and enthusiasm with software developers about what's going on with Alexa. I spend a lot of my time building software that runs on Alexa, and I spend a lot of my time listening to all of you that build stuff and bring that information back to the product team to help make it better and more useful. So that's kind of my role. But let me introduce some of the other folks we have here. We have Kavindra Singh, we have Charlie Zhu, and we have Justin Jeffress. So Kavindra, let me start with you. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, let people know what your role is, and kind of what your role is inside the Alexa Conversations team.
Yes, I'm a software developer. We worked to bring Alexa Conversation live with Alexa Skills Kit. So I mostly worked in the integration of Alexa Conversation platform in the ASK world. I worked on a lot of developer tooling like Developer Console and all the systems behind it, like model building and runtime systems. So that's kind of my role.
Very, very good. All right, thank you for being here, Kavindra. Justin, I think a lot of people that are on this channel probably recognize you, but I'd love for you to give us the quick story on why you're here with us today.
Yes. Yeah, my name is Justin Jeffress, and I'm here today to talk about Alexa Conversations. I'm an evangelist at Amazon. I do a lot of stuff I do overlaps a little bit with Jeff, so do a lot of streaming and stuff. And for Alexa Conversations, I was involved heavily on with in the early beginnings, experimenting with the product and learning how to build skills with it, and then coming up with training materials on how to educate you all fine people who are building the future of voice with Alexa by building the pet match tutorial and collaborating with people internally to build content. So that's what I've been working on with Alexa Conversations.
Yeah, I was very interested to see how that would go. I thought of you kind of as the guinea pig of Alexa Conversations, right? You got to dive in and use a lot of the stuff before most people had access, and that's why you also gave a lot of the talks at Alexa Live based on this content. So I'm glad you could be here. You have a lot of experience. I'm hoping we can share with people. And then last but certainly not least, Charlie Zhu, if you could share how you're involved in Alexa Conversations here, that'd be great.
Sure. I work as a senior AI engineer in Alexa Conversation team. I mainly focus on the build time system of Alexa Conversation, where we, based on what the sample dialogues provided by the user, we build the model for the conversation. And within the build time, I spend a lot of time working on the simulator, which try to expand the sample dialogues from developers so that our model can be trained.
Great. And I think we'll definitely have some more questions and dive into some of that stuff here in a little bit. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so we have our foundation. We now know who everybody is here. So everybody that's watching, hopefully you've got a good vibe for who the folks are here on the screen. I am just your loyal host, but I have purposely, and this is by design, stayed away from actually doing anything with Alexa Conversations yet, with the goal that when I could have this conversation, we could really dive in and ask a lot of the questions that I think a lot of you may be thinking as well. How do I use this? When do I use this? What's the right time to apply this? We'll get into all of that stuff here in the next hour or so. But before we do that, one of the rules about Alexa and Friends is that I like to ask peculiar questions of my guests. And so, Kavindra, I'm going to ask you first because you've got this really cool background. It looks like you've got a robot behind you, and there's like a rocket just leaning against the wall because everybody's got those. I would love for you to tell me if you could pick any one superpower of all the superpowers you've ever heard of, or even if you want to make one up. If you could pick one superpower for yourself, what would that be?
Good question. That will probably be getting things done, rolling those out, even if they are not completely ready yet. So incrementally delivering and improving over overall as we go forward.
Nice. So for yourself, you want to be able to just like boom, things are done. Like not have to worry about like really diving into the nuts and bolts. It's just I imagine a thing and it just happens. That's actually pretty interesting. That's a lot of when I think about Alexa. That's really what its core mission is. Really, right? Something comes to my mind, I just say it, and the thing can potentially happen. I like that. How about you, Charlie? Do you have any thoughts on a superpower you'd really like to have? It could also be things unrelated to work, like flying or super hearing or something like that. But what is your thing?
Yeah, since my childhood, I think I always imagine I have a vision of the future.
Oh. Right.
Just to predict what will happen in the future, then I can probably avoid a lot of disasters and also try to like make people's life better from that super.
I like that, and I would also really want to talk to you about like sports outcomes and things. That would be wonderful. That's good. Being able to see into the future, I think that's a really good superpower. How about you, Justin? What do you got?
Yeah, I when I was on Alexa and Friends before, I think you asked me this question, and I think I answered flying, and I'm gonna go with that again. I think being able to just like fly anywhere would be amazing.
Right.
You need to get away from the city, just fly out into the wilderness. You go fly up the top of a mountain.
Right. Bear shows up. Get out. You can get right out of there. Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
And you've got kind of. I mean, I've known you for a few years now, but you've definitely got that wilderness look to you these days. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, so we've gotten through superpowers. There's one more I want to ask, and I know you've answered this one as well, Justin. So I'll let you pass on this. But Kavindra and Charlie, I'd love for you to know. Charlie, I'll start with you. So Kavindra will have a moment to think about it. I'm more interested in the why of your answer than the what. But the question is, if you had to fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses, which one would you feel better about having to fight?
That's an interesting question. I think I would choose 1,000 ducks to fight.
Okay, they'd be horses, but they'd be tiny like ducks.
Yeah. So from an engineer's point of view, that's more like a question about like to me, it's like it can be solved by parallelism. So that if we have 1,000 ducks, there is a possibility of divide and conquer.
Okay.
And then if we can have some GPU to solve the problem.
Very, very good. All right, so you would optimize your systems to be able to take on those 100 ducks. I like those 100 horses, I guess. How about you, Kavindra? What's your thoughts on that question?
I would probably pick the other one.
Okay.
I would like to keep myself focused and focused on one big task, so I can kind of creatively work on it from the small part to the bigger part that way.
I also imagine a duck the size of a horse would be. I said this on an earlier stream today, but I imagine it would be almost majestic. I would love to be able to ride/fly a horse-sized duck. I think that would be very worthwhile. I think that would be pretty cool. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for your answers. Those are always silly questions, but I'm glad that we can get into those and go for it. So, okay, those are my questions. I was really glad that we could do that. Justin, now is when I start to lay on the Alexa Conversations gravy on this conversation we're having here. So I'd love for you to kind of give me the quick overview. Take a few minutes if you need it, and tell me about, for those that are watching that may not know, like, what is Alexa Conversations? How does it work? Why did we build it?
Yeah, so Alexa Conversations is a really great tool to help you build better skills. So Jeff, I actually want to ask you a question. Have you ever had to have a conversation with somebody about something, and before you had that conversation in your mind, go through a simulation of how that conversation is going to take place?
My wife would say that no, I've never done that. But yes, I know exactly what you're describing. Yes.
Sure. Okay. And then when you actually have that conversation with that person, does it actually pan out the way that you like simulated it in your mind?
Almost never.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the difficult things about being a voice designer is that, you're doing that. Like you are simulating a conversation that's going to take place between your skill and the user. And oftentimes the way how you perceived that conversation to go is not exactly how it pans out. And so what Alexa Conversations does for you is it actually does a lot of different things for you. So you can classify like the benefits of Alexa Conversations into two parts, build time and run time. And so at build time, one of the things that it does is figures out how your sample dialogue that you create, which is that simulation of that conversation, could deviate from your prescripted path. And I'm really happy today because Charlie is going to be able to speak to what happens at build time, how Alexa Conversations simulates the conversation and figures out all the ways that it could deviate. And then at runtime, what it does for you is it keeps track of the text. And so I'm happy that Kavindra's on because Kavindra will be able to talk about what time. So, at Alexa Live, we described Alexa Conversations as an AI-driven dialogue manager, which is true, but it also does stuff for you at build time. So it's doing those two different pieces. And in doing so, what happens is, at build time, you get to focus on not figuring out how all the ways that the conversation could deviate. You get to stay focused on building and designing the conversation and what the goal of that particular dialogue is. And then in your backend, instead of having to keep track of conversational state, handling things like context carryover, let's say you're in the middle of a dialogue and the user has a question, they go and ask that question. With dialogue management, which is not Alexa Conversations, you are in charge of keeping track of that conversational state. And so if you switch to another intent to answer a side question and then go back to the original context, if you don't restore the context yourself manually, the skill has amnesia and it starts over from the beginning. So, sure. Alexa Conversations handles that part for you. So you don't have to worry about restoring that context when coming back from a side question.
All right, so this sounds like really advanced dialogue management to me, where, I'm very familiar with dialogue management. I use it actually in a skill that I'm building, which is more or less an Alexa casino, right? There's no real gambling. There's no real money involved, but it's an opportunity for you to play things like video poker and slots and stuff. And the dialogue management features that I'm using are for like gathering bets and gathering bet positions, right? So if you think about something like video poker, I just say bet 5 on poker, and then it's using dialogue management to make sure that you gave me a number. And if I didn't get a number from you, then I say, oh, okay, how much did you want to bet? I heard you say you want to play poker, right? And in something like roulette, where you actually have to place a bet and a position, it'll say, oh, okay, well, you told me you want to bet on red, but I don't actually know how much you want to bet. Or the flip side, it'll say, oh, I heard you say you want to bet 5. Where do you want to bet those 5? Right? And so I'm just using some simple dialogue management, but behind the scenes, you're right, I am handling all of the things that go on there, and I have to keep all of that context in place. So how would Alexa Conversations maybe help me in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so one of the great things about Alexa Conversations is it supports delegation, which allows you to, actually the big benefit of a delegation is it allows you to be able to use Alexa Conversations with an existing skill. So you don't have to throw away everything and start fresh. You don't have to go all in on Alexa Conversations. And this allows you to be able to use the different parts and focus them on what they do best. So what delegation allows you to do is it allows you to delegate from your interaction model to Alexa Conversations and Alexa Conversations back to your interaction model, and vice versa. So you can start with Alexa Conversations and go to your interaction model and back and forth. So, so your interaction model is really great for one-shot invocations where there's not a whole lot of back and forth that needs to take place. What Alexa Conversations shines is in those situations where there could be a lot of different ambiguity. And like you said, with what you're using now with dialogue management is you're doing that now. You're using that to handle the bet where they may tell you the number, but like you don't know the location of which thing that they want to bet on in roulette. Or let's say we're playing a card game and they make a bet and that bet is invalid. You're going to check to make sure that that is a valid bet at that particular moment in the game. And so what I would suggest doing in the case with the poker game would be you would have the main engine of the game be an interaction model, and what that would be in charge of is keeping track of the gamer profile, the money that they have in their bank, maybe some like badges or achievements for like, different things that you might give them, like, hey, you played your first game, you won your 100th game, you've bet over $1 million and lost over whatever, right? Like all these different status things that you get over playing the life of the game. And